This week's show is brought to you by Pretty Easy Podcasts, helping podcasters get their shows off the ground and running at a low cost. Go to prettyeasypodcast.com today to get started. Hit up the Contact Us section, fill out your information, and your show could be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all your favorite podcast platforms in no time. It's professional sounding podcast production done the right way at a low rate without you ever having to think about any of the production stuff. You don't have to learn how to edit. You don't have to learn how to get your show wherever you need it to get to. All you have to do is sign up with Pretty Easy Podcasts, worry about the content, worry about being creative and doing your show your way. Go to prettyeasypodcast.com.
This is the future. This is not the past.
The new XFL will kick off in 2020.
If you smell what the XFL is cooking.
It's still football, but it's professional football reimagined.
This is our moment, our story to tell. This is history begun.
This is the XFL.
Welcome, football fans. This is the week of July 7th, 2019. This is the road to 2020, and this is the XFL show. I'm Alan.
And I'm Bryant.
The team name's anticipation is at a fever pitch, and we're stopping the clock at every play in the final 2 minutes of each half. This is episode 76. The comeback period, and oh my, don't call it a comeback, Bryant, because we've been here all week. I feel like I've been talking XFL every day this week, either on our Patreon or prepping for the show this week. It's been nonstop, even in a holiday week.
Alan, I was talking to the missus and telling her, hey, what are we going to do for breakfast on Sunday? And then I realized that it wasn't Sunday quite yet. We've been talking so much football for this last 7 days that it was a week's worth, I thought, at least. It's been a holiday week, but definitely not on the football side, at least not on the XFL side. Plenty to talk about, plenty to get to. It's what America was built on, I guess, is football now. Add that to the Constitution.
It is our passion, and we love it, and we know you do too. 724-565-4XFL. If you ever want to talk football and be heard on the show, you're allowed to call into the XFL fan line anytime. Highly encourage that. Last week was a doozy. In Tampa Bay, 150 players or so were there for the summer showcase. And we have St. Louis coming up on July 13th, the 8th and final stop on the Showcase Tour. And then we'll be all wrapped up. And then zooming into some key dates and, yes, those team names that we're going to talk about, Brian.
Alan, somebody asked me if you and I are okay after the rough week we had last week leading up to last week's show, just about the whole Tier 1 quarterback conversation. I told them we're fine. It's all friendly. It's all fair and love in football. Right, so it's
we're fine. It's a good, crisp friendship, and we're fine. It's all good. And especially when the league starts, we're both going to be cheering for the XFL LA. We've picked our teams, and we're going to be on the same page.
For sure. And then you're right. This right. This show is dedicated to a lot of the team names. We're finally getting to it. We are taking a break in the summer showcases, probably because of the holiday, at least the XFL's decision to do so. But we're going to throw in some good insight that we got about, comebacks. Comebacks, baby.
Yes, the comeback period. We're going to talk all about it in this week's Hot Read. We've got team names coming up in our cover too. But remember, you can interact with us, as a lot of you did after last week's show, at XFL Show, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You checking in on Brian and I arguing over quarterback signings. And you know what we don't disagree on is the St. Louis team. I don't think either of us are fans of them. We're labeling them as our rivals, even though it doesn't geographically make sense. LA and St. Louis, Bryant. But good news for the Lou this week. They got themselves a wide receiver coach a lot of people will recognize. Zahir Hakim, the former St. Louis Ram, not Isaac Bruce, the return man that played with him. You used to cheer for this guy. He was also the same position, a wide receiver coach in the AAF with the San Diego Fleet. So Coach Hayes filling out his coaching staff there.
Yeah, it's the one that's trailing. He's really had no names name to his coaching staff. He has a defensive coordinator, his brother. He has Hakeem.
Yeah, no offensive coordinator.
No offensive coordinator. His staff is slowly coming together. I also believe St. Louis, were they the last ones to name their president, if I'm not mistaken?
I believe so, and they're the last ones to have a summer showcase. So it could be interesting by July 13th. Kevin Gilbride held a showcase with New York not having an offensive coordinator, so maybe Coach Hayes will do the same because he could end up calling a lot of his own plays, having been a part of that very complicated offense with the Bengals. Maybe he's going to take the play calling duties like we assume Kevin Gilbride will for New York there in St. Louis. Coach Hayes and St. Louis getting ready for the last summer showcase. I can't wait. And then players get signed after that.
That's the plan, at least shortly after that, I would think. No more showcases. We're done with that. They have one more stint with the Spring League in late July. And then it's finalizing that rule book and getting ready for the cuts that happen August 31st. That's what's going to happen with the XFL. So it's the calendar's getting smaller. Everything's kind of becoming a lot more crunched, and hopefully they solve this quickly.
Yes, it's going to be kind of coming at everybody real quick, all these important dates with signings and announcements. Oh, those team name announcements. Let's get to those in just one moment, we promise. Just want to let everyone know, again, at XFL Show, if you want to respond to anything we say ever on the show, or if you have a topic idea, or if you have anything that you think we should touch upon, whatever the case may be, at XFL Shows where you find us on any social media of your choice. And, hey, also, hope everyone had a happy 4th of July, Bryant. I know I did. I was actually up. We did this week's Patreon show, right? I was up in a cabin on a mountain, and because I was on a mountain, I could look out and I saw like 8 different cities fireworks. It was amazing. So I had a great 4th. I hope you did too.
I did, man. Steaks and gaining weights is what I did all 4th of July
yes.
week. It was a great no fireworks slip by these hands. They're too important nowadays, but no, definitely had a great 4th of July, and hope everyone did too. Safe out there, especially.
Yes, absolutely. Now this week on Patreon, Brian, it was a doozy, especially when you got the interview we're going to play on this week's show. That went to Patreon immediately as soon as we finished the interview, and that's the beauty of being a patron. You get early access to stuff, early access to the full show, immediate access to interviews, and also we had a fun, not XFL show this week, kind of talking some fantasy football, a lot going on the Patreon.
Alan, if you are not a patron, you're listening to this show right now. It is July 7th. That interview was posted on July 1st, so you could have had some full insight on that. Alan, you and Vince went through every single quarterback in the National Football League and how they could fit for the XFL. It was a great week for the Patreon, so go over there, check it out. There's a lot of great extra content that we're always posting. I know we harp on it a lot here, but we really mean it. If you want some full XFL discussions, find out why me and Alan were really so mad at each other last week. Go over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/this is the XFL show.
Yes, it's the best way to ride down the road to 2020, as we say, and really any tier of your choice. You have so many options, and every tier has awesome content, and really it makes the show possible. How much more we put into the show, it's all possible because of our awesome patrons who give to the show. Tiers range from $1 all the way up to $25. You can pick it and enjoy some premium XFL and football content that we love bringing you and want to do more. So go check it out. Like Brian said, patreon.com/this is the XFL show. And finally, it is the moment that so many people apparently on Instagram have been waiting for, Brian. This week, in this cover too, it is a kind of a 2-tiered approach to what's going on with team names and identities. If you're ready, I'm ready, because I'm not irritated with everybody wanting the team names, right? But I mean, we figured out, I think, you figured out a very cool way on social media to approach this. I had an awesome interview earlier this week, and I think we're going to touch upon the topic in a relevant way, even though we know that this announcement isn't quite coming yet.
Yeah, we approached it in two different ways. We looked at it as to how the XFL needs to approach these team names and why they're probably waiting too long. That was your end. My end was, let's talk to the fans. Let's see what they want. What do they want these team names to be? And let's get there, because that's what has been buzzing for the XFL for quite some time, is team names. People are waiting for these. So let's broach this from both directions, and let's see what we can get out of this.
Let's rock with this week's cover 2.
Going for 2. Go for 2 and the lead.
Okay, the first part of our cover 2, we're going to look at team names, and more team names, because that's all anyone on social media, at least, talks about. I over the holiday, with friends and acquaintances, and I'm explaining the league and the podcast to some friends and, and their significant others, Bryant. And guess the first thing they asked me after I went on a passionate, rousing speech about 25-second clocks and comeback periods and cut days and shootout overtimes. You know what the first question they said after I explained all that to them was?
They want to talk about the shootout overtime, obviously.
No, they said, so what are the team names going to be in Seattle and Tampa Bay? That's what they asked me. So you know this is what everybody wants to talk about, everybody's interested in, because it's going to not only it's fun to speculate about, but I think also people are excited for the reactions to the names that are going to come out, and that's also going to be really fun. So you kind of came up with an idea to solicit the hopes and dreams for the team identities on Instagram this week, and you got a whole bunch of responses.
No, tons of responses. Alan, I shared some comments with you about how people were saying it's July, where are the team names? It was July 3rd when that comment came out. People need to relax, but to help them, sometimes you just have to punch a pillow, just to get that frustration out a little bit. Maybe it'll help ease the tension. That's what this was. I just wanted people to reach out, give what they thought the names should be, could be, what they want them to be, and in hopes that this will ease the stress and the anticipation of team names actually being announced by the XFL.
So this is pretty cool. You made kind of a prompt. It was a cool visual prompt on Instagram, and people could fill out the team names they wanted for each city, right? And I had fun doing this. I don't even remember the teams I put. I definitely put Dallas. I definitely put Dallas, y'all, and Sasquatches for Seattle and Dallas. But and you got so many here, and let's give it up to Houston. They got the most responses, I guess, huh? People had the most suggestions for different team names, I guess, for the Houston team.
Yeah, in Houston, definitely, I think they had over 30 names discussed on Instagram that people brought up. There was a lot of duplicates, people saying Hurricanes was one of the bigger ones, Roughnecks too, or one of the bigger ones. Alan, if you look at this list that I put in front of you, what
I'm looking at it, yep,
that stand out to you?
Oh, so yeah, looking at it, I like Hogs is really good. Night Riders is really cool, especially if you could get David Hasselhoff to be there at the first home game with Kit. I'm all for the Night Riders. I would love Astronauts or Cosmos, but I don't know. It's just not as good as Astros. I mean, they've got the coolest, NASA-related name. So maybe go towards something more like Rattlesnakes or Roughnecks. Those are the two that stand out the most to me. I like Rattlesnakes and I like Roughnecks for Houston. But you got a bunch here. Someone even said Fury. That's a Seattle trademark, people.
I did like one of the ones I liked the most was Gunrunners, but I know that's not going to be a thing. The Houston Gamblers too sounded really cool, just in that sense. But do you take some of these names that were in the AAF? We'll see some later on, but they had the Apollos in there. It makes sense. I mean, that's where no, you're not a big fan of that one.
Nah.
How about the Moonshots?
Is that the one I wrote? I think I put that one. I think that's the one I put. I like the Moonshots.
The Moonshots.
I mean, that's
you actually did that one.
It's great because obviously,
yes, it was you, by the way.
Yeah, obviously, the Apollo missions go to the moon, but also it's got a subtle second meaning because Warren Moon was a Houston Oiler. I like Moonshots.
Oh, there you go. That's what the Generals sounds pretty good. Brahma Bulls, someone brought up. I think that as To the Rock, right? That's a little bit there. There were some good ones in there. I like the alliteration that I saw with the Houston Hustle. If they're going to go with that kind of like little, monikers and
pretty
stuff
cool.
like that. But yeah,
it's more like a basketball
team
name to me. I know Vince were here. If Vince were here, he would say Oil Diggers is his favorite, or just Diggers.
Diggers. There you go. Were there mining in Houston?
Well, it's big oil town, so it's
okay. So maybe not.
All cutting in.
Well, then the next one we had
Texas tea into the ground.
The next one we had up was Dallas. Some more responses there, Alan. I think we all know which one you've been clamoring for since the very beginning, and that's just Dallas, y'all. It seems like it won a pull out there by like a wide margin as well. But I like Outlaws. If they're going to bring one back, I mean, the Dallas Outlaws sounds really cool to me. I don't know why, but it does.
I like Destroyers is on here. Someone put that. That's a good one. It's very cool. It's a great Kiss album, Destroyer. Also, you got alliteration. Shout out to Eddie, who came up with Whataburgers on Instagram. I saw that. You got a corporate sponsor there as well. I think Whataburger just went like national or got bought by
they just sold
a big company.
Yeah, they just sold.
Dallas Dingoes is also very cool. I like that one.
Like dingoes. The Desperados too. It was kind of cool. I like that one as well. There's some interesting names in here. The Dallas Skyline, I guess. There's Vaqueros. A lot of that Spanish, cool. English. Yeah, the Spanish, the Spanglish type ones. Because I guess it's Vaqueros, but Vaqueros would be the one that you say it in English. So
yeah,
there's some good names in there. I'm trying to remember exactly what we decided on.
I don't know, but I'm looking at LA. I'm looking ahead at LA actually, and. Oh my, these are bad.
Moving on.
Oh my, these are bad. These are the LA team names are really bad. I think we're gonna have to just settle for Extreme. Hopefully, just the original name.
It can't be anything else. LA Quakes maybe are the only other ones you could probably do.
Wasn't that a team?
San Jose
Wasn't that a San Jose
MLS?
Yeah.
Yeah, MLS there. The Aftershocks? I don't know about that one.
No.
Yeah, I think you have to go with Extreme. I just don't see what else you could go with here.
Did Bill Dance get in on this? Because someone put Anglerfish. Someone's a big fisherman voting on here. No, not a lot of good suggestions for LA. Tampa Bay got some all right ones. Tampa Bay Blackbeards is amazing.
I like that one. That was my favorite. That might have been my favorite suggestion. Tampa Bay Tuna. The Blackbeards might have been my favorite suggestion out of all 8 teams. That one was pretty good. Although the Tampa Bay Florida Men, that's a pretty good one too. I think that might be up there. It might have to be up there. Alan, the Tampa Bay Bandits is the one that everybody was kind of clamoring for as well. Rebels kind of falls within that a little bit, I would assume too. Cannons was kind of cool because that's your homage to your pirates and battleships and things like that. So that might not be too bad.
Well, we're going to get into one of those names, the Bandits, which was the USFL team, legendary, I think, team identity for the Tampa Bay USFL team. And we're talking to trademark lawyer Josh Gerben coming up. That's the interview I had earlier in the week. And I definitely made sure to ask him about a team name like the Tampa Bay Bandits, one that's established, has obviously an older fan base of the USFL in the 80s, but still has legs and people recognize it. And names like that, if they're still usable for the XFL, if maybe that might be the Tampa Bay team name. Although if it's not, I really want it to be Bandits, but the more I think about it, Blackbeards or Tuna are also very good options. These are so good.
Tuna, I don't know about Tuna, but Blackbeards I think is definitely, that's a good one. I like Blackbeards. Now, is that a Disney character in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie?
Blackbeard? I mean, I'm sure he's in one of the movies, but he's, long before Disney. Blackbeard's a real-life legend.
Okay, so then no squash there with Disney. You don't want to make the ESPN mad, right?
No,
right before you make the kickoff.
Tampa Bay Tuna, and then you could have Bill Parcells as your mascot. Seattle has some good ones. I like Seattle Caffeine. Seattle Typhoons is pretty good, although that's not one of the trademarked. Seattle Grunge, it looks like. Seattle Rain, Seattle Spartans, Seattle Surge, and Neon Knights, really good one. Seattle Sluggers, that's a baseball thing, though. That wouldn't make sense for a football team, would it? Seattle Serpents.
What's the Seattle Serpents? I like that one.
Do you think one of the 5 trademarks names, did we go over this last week that I asked you this? Do you think one of those 5 trademark names is going to be the name of the Seattle team?
I don't know if you actually asked me that question. I would say yes. I'm going to say yes.
Did you listen to my interview we're going to play here with Josh Gerben, attorney at law?
I did.
He kind of has me leaning towards no, and you'll hear why. But very interesting. Seattle has a bunch of good potential names, I think, even more than the 5 that were trademarked. St. Louis, you could do a lot there as well. Stallions has been a popular one. You got here, Stallions is there, I see. Clydesdale's, really good one.
I like that.
Asteroids. Ooh, Asteroids would actually be pretty good for Houston.
Houston?
Yeah, I like that.
That's not too bad. Yeah, that's actually good. You also have St. Louis Archers, like for the St. Louis Arch. Spartans was kind of cool. Silverbacks. Now, Alan, what is a silverback?
It's a gorilla. It's a type of gorilla.
Are there a lot of gorillas
gorilla.
native to St. Louis?
Don't think so. I mean, maybe in the zoo. Maybe I don't know. It's a cool name. And
second biggest zoo in the world, by the way, in St. Louis.
St. Louis.
Yeah.
Oh, they definitely have to have some silverbacks there. Here's the city with the least amount of suggestions, D.C. Not a lot of options here. My suggestion of Crooks is not there, but I do see Warbirds, which is pretty good. I like that, actually. And Sentinels, which is all right to me. Seattle Sentinels would be all right. Which one do you like in D.C.?
I like Sentinels. That one's pretty good. The DC Federals. I don't know if I like putting it all together. I kind of like them just Federals, but Revolution was always one. But I think that's the New England Revolution, so I don't know if that one can be used.
Yeah, Liberty is the New York WNBA team. Yeah,
Warbirds is pretty cool. I like that one. Now I don't know if they want war associated with any other team names.
What about DC Blue Angels? You saw the planes that fly overhead at sporting events.
The Blue Angels. I feel like there'd be some trademark issues there with that one unless you got them on board. I did like Bandits for DC if that was not a Tampa Bay name just because of the what about the DC Stars and Stripes? I put that one on there just because I saw it. I didn't know what to think about it, Alan. The Stars and Stripes of DC.
No, you can't have 2 logos or two mascots or 2 names. It's only one. That's the rule. Jake would be very mad if you suggested that. That's very out of the norm.
This ends with
Stars
an S, though.
and
2
Stars
S's.
and Stripes. You can't be something and something as a team. Then that has me asking which players on the team are stars and which are stripes.
But I mean, if team have 2 primary colors, why can't they have 2 primary names?
I don't know. You're making my head explode. And then the suggestions for New York that we got. We've got New York, Minutemen, Freedom, Empire, Empires, Blizzards, Skyscrapers, Hitmen, and Avengers. Wasn't Avengers the LA Arena
I like
team?
Empire. Was the LA Arena team. I like Empire, though. That's
Empire was, I'm pretty sure, way back when we did a whole show about team names, just speculating and throwing names out there. And I think a consensus might have been the Empire among ourselves, at least. I don't remember clearly, though. Do you remember that?
I want to say it was Empire because it's just too good not for it to be Empire. And the no S. Just the New York Empire.
Also,
right.
Honorable, just we can't have multiple empires in one state. That's chaos. Honorable mention to LA Traffic. Just saw that suggestion there as well. These were all via Instagram. Bryant's elaborate, what do you call it? What would you call this thing? Campaign to get everyone's hopes and dreams for what the team names will be. They're already picked, though, folks. You all know that the league already has these set. They're keeping them close to the vest. Nobody knows what they are. We're digging. We're trying to get word on what they might be. And you're about to hear an interview we did to do just that. Because even with all these suggestions, Bryant, with all the internet research we could do and the social media rumor and innuendo, it's still unclear what these team names for all 8 cities are going to be. Seattle had that trademark leak last week, so we went to the guy who let everyone know about that, Josh Gerben, who's a trademark lawyer out of Washington, D.C. He's the one that posted on Twitter a pretty informative video explaining what the league did with their trademarks for the Seattle team. And so we reached out to him to get him on to ask him what that whole process is like and why the league would trademark those names and why the league might be taking longer than we all had hoped to announce the names of these teams. Like they said, Brian, it's already July 2019.
It's an interesting process. Your interview goes into the depths of how the process works of trademarking your team name, whether you actually need a trademark, whether the ramifications if you don't have a trademark, things of that nature that really kind of broaden the spectrum a little bit and how the XFL probably has either had these selected a long time ago. They either had these a long time ago or they don't care and they're going to move forward with whatever they want. It's an interesting conversation. I think having someone with this expertise in Josh Gerben helped me at least understand why the XFL has either waited as long as they have or why they haven't really made this too public to begin with.
And that's the main goal here with this interview. I reached out to him earlier in the week. This interview, I guess, was conducted earlier this week on Monday, right, Brian? And I don't even remember when I talked to him, but I know that we got a lot of good information out of him. We wanted to get an idea of what goes into, making sure the league is able to name these teams, what the league's been doing, and understanding it. Obviously, he's an expert in this, but we wanted to kind of get this in layman's terms for everybody to realize what the league is doing in order to secure the team names, why it might have been taking so long, and also whether or not the XFL needs to worry about certain team names and what team names are on the table for them to use. And can they go out and purchase a team name that's already owned by someone or some group? So we go into all of that. I think he does a really excellent job of laying it all out there in plain English for everybody to understand. It might be lawyer talk here, but it is not. It's not boring. It's straight to the point, and it's very informative. So if you've been wondering everything that goes on and goes into the team naming process for the XFL, I think we get a good glimpse of what that might be from attorney Josh Gerben, founder of the Gerben Law Firm. Here's our interview with him earlier in the week. Josh Gerben, founder of the Gerben Law Firm, a trademark law firm, keeping an eye on, things the XFL's doing in regards to the team names and who else knows what. They got a lot of stuff they have to pin down building this league. And Josh, you had a really informative video based on the Seattle names that were trademarked for the XFL. We had the Surge, the Force, the Dragons, the Fury, and the Wild. We discussed it on our show last week. How does this process work for the XFL, and how do you come across these filings?
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. The filings that were made by the XFL were made based on what's called an intent to use with the trademark office. And what that means is that they can get these filings in and secure a priority date as of the filing date for these names, as then the process would unfold as to the final selection of a name. So presuming that they've whittled it down to these 5 names and they just weren't sure yet, or maybe they're trying to throw people off the trail of the exact name and wanted to get some protection in place, that is typically why you would make, filings at this stage. But of course, we've only seen filings through the entity with the trademark office for the Seattle names and none of the other teams at this point.
So there's a lot of gamesmanship that might be going into this, trying to throw fans and maybe competitors off the scent of what the team name is. Also, it's got to be a complicated process. I mean, fans would believe, because they've been clamoring for names, Josh. Anytime we do any kind of content, the first thing anybody asks, even if it's not related to team names, is where are the team names? Is this the most complicated part of the team building process, you think, for the XFL? And if so, what makes trademarking a team name and identity so difficult?
Well, I think certainly it's a major part of the process, right? And anytime, a team name, everybody's going to have an opinion on that. And I think the XFL has in the past had, very sort of creative names, and for example, you had the Rod Smart and He Hate Me, and that is that's always just sort of been the moniker of the XFL, right? So I think there's probably a decent amount of pressure on them that come up with some pretty good names here. And one of the things we saw on Twitter last week is once we posted this news and it started making the rounds, on everybody's Twitter feed, and it was getting reposted, there's a lot of opinions, being put out there on these five, and I was waiting for someone to sort of do a definitive Twitter poll, although I don't think I've seen one yet. But perhaps the XFL is getting some sort of free market test by putting these names out there and letting the Twitterverse sort of comment on it to get some feedback.
If I wanted to announce my team name tomorrow, how long do I need to register my team name prior?
So the total trademark application process typically takes between 8 to 10 months. It's a very long process. What will happen is once you submit an application like the XFL did, it takes about 4 months for the U.S. government agency here, the United States Patent and Trademark Office, to pick up and even review the filing. So the idea in, again, getting these filings in is you sort of reserving rights as of the filing date, but this is a very lengthy process. And during that process, any one of these names could be refused by the government if there's a similar name out there somewhere in the world. So, if there's another Fury for a sports team or a football team, that could cause a conflict and prevent the XFL from ultimately registering the names. So there is some risk in sort of starting this process sort of this late in the game, in the sense that obviously they can do their own trademark searches and the Trademark Council can provide an opinion on the name, but that is not a perfect science. And so there's always going to be some risk here that any name that's chosen might have a conflict with another trademark at some point in the process.
And so with team names, if Seattle is the only franchise where we have seen trademark filings, how could the other 7 names be getting team names if there's nothing filed yet? Do you think they're just being counseled on other names that they think they're going to be cleared on? Or how will that work if you're saying this process takes 8 months and they're telling fans announcing team names within the next month?
Absolutely. So you are not required under any law in the United States to have a federally registered trademark to use a particular name, whether it be for a clothing brand or for a football team. And so they can certainly move forward with the selection of the names and using the names in the marketplace and, playing games under the team names that are not yet federally registered. They'll have the pending applications and go through that process during the course of the coming year. And that is just sort of the risk in starting the naming, or, getting the names filed for trademarks so late in the game. They could have filed the trademarks, let's say, back in January and already had a lot of the process complete and had some certainty around how the government was going to handle their applications. But because they are waiting until the last minute to make any trademark filings and make any other type of announcement, they're going to just sort of accept that risk that as they go through the trademark process, there could be some problems in getting the registrations. Of course, there may not be. We're just speculating at this stage, but that would be the risk you're undertaking here if you're the XFL.
Okay, so, and you said that the league could use one of those 5 names for Seattle or none of them. And in that case, what happens to the trademarks on those names? Does the league just hog those, or do they kind of just go back into a pool and they're open again for someone else to file?
So it would be the latter. In order for these names, any one of these names, to actually register as a trademark, the XFL would have to file something called a proof of commercial use. They'd have to prove to the USPTO that they're actually commercially using the name. And that goes for any trademark that's ever filed. So in this case, you're able to make the initial filing to reserve rights. But at this stage, think of it as like a pending trademark, or, some people know patent pending. That's some language people have heard before. So think of it like that. These are just pending applications. These are not registered trademarks at this point. So if they were to, whatever names they do not use, as you mentioned, these applications would just then abandon, and anybody else could theoretically pick them up and use them for a football team at some point.
And the league has said that most likely the old XFL team names won't be used. That maybe one or two of them. They haven't officially announced that yet. But could the league use their own old XFL team names, or maybe perhaps USFL team names, or team names from other defunct spring football leagues, or would those create trademark issues?
That's a great question. Now, as far as the old XFL names, presuming that the ownership of the current XFL is somewhat similar and perhaps owns some of the residual rights in those names, that likely is not going to be an issue. As far as other leagues and the names that might have been used in the past, there would be in most cases, the XFL could probably pick up and use some of those names if they're just completely not being used anymore. Under trademark law, though, there is this idea of sort of residual value in any name that might have been popularized at some point. And so you have to be a little careful in using names from old teams that were from different leagues, where there could be the potential for some legal claims for whoever the residual owners of those trademarks might be. So that would be something that would have to be looked at pretty carefully by the XFL's lawyers if they were going to go in that direction.
And say they know the residual, whoever owns the residual rights to that team name. Say, for instance, Tampa Bay Bandits is one that's been popular and talked about. Could the XFL separately just make a deal with whoever owns that team name and identity right now before, and even avoid just trademark filing it, and maybe just give them some sort of kickback or a deal based on rights?
Absolutely. So trademarks are are actually a property right. So they're intangible property, meaning you can't hold them or feel them, but they can be bought and sold or licensed. So you could easily go and purchase trademark rights from somebody. You could even license the rights, although, in this case, I think the XFL would rather an outright purchase. So that would certainly be a possibility if they wanted to clear legal title to a particular name.
There we go. So the Tampa Bay Bandits are still alive. For some reason, it doesn't look like I'm going to get my Seattle Sasquatches, Josh, but oh well. The 5 names that you found were pretty good. Have you...
you never know.
Last question. If you wanted to break any news or if you've seen anything, have you seen any other XFL trademarks filed anywhere that we should be aware of?
So I have looked to see if there's been any other names filed anywhere, because one of the things the XFL could do if they were really trying to hide the ball is they could file the names in another country first. So let's say they filed the trademarks in the UK and not in the US. As long as they filed the U.S. trademarks within 6 months of those UK filings, they would get the priority date that they got in the UK. So basically all these countries, there's a treaty that says, hey, look, if you file a trademark in one particular country that's a member of the treaty, so long as you file it in any other treaty member within the next 6 months, your priority date goes all the way back to the filing date in the original country. So major companies have used this tactic, like Apple Computer does it a lot, where they're going to launch a new product in the U.S. and they go file a trademark in some obscure country, and nobody really sees the filing, so they can get their priority situated on the trademark without ever having to announce the name. And we've tried to use some technology. We've used it, go through various databases in different countries to see if we could see if they were doing that, and we did not see anything. But if your listeners wanted to have some fun and go on a scavenger hunt, you could look at various trademark databases around the world looking for anything filed by Alpha Entertainment, which is the entity that the XFL has been using, at least here in the U.S., to file their trademarks. So that is just sort of something we've been trying to keep an eye on, because that would be another way to sort of hide the ball here, but we haven't been able to uncover anything.
That sounds like a pretty fun activity if you're going to be indoors a little bit over the 4th of July. I'd encourage our listeners to do that for sure. I know they want to know the team names, Josh, and the XFL is apparently doing a great job of keeping those under wraps until the big reveal, I guess.
They are, because I get questions all the time. Hey, Josh, obviously we're doing a lot of sports-related trademark posts, and everybody's been asking me what I'm seeing, and I keep saying, we've been looking. Trust me, we know there's a lot of interest here and haven't seen anything. The only other thing I'll put out there for your listeners, that we actually put something out about a month or so ago. The XFL is pursuing a trademark on "He Hate Me."
Yeah.
And that to me is sort of an interesting thing. Obviously, there was some rather sad news about Rod Smart and the other week that came out, but the XFL has been moving forward trying to protect that name. I think just because it's been so ubiquitous with the league over the years, and that is a pending application they have as well for a trademark.
Well, let's hope he also gets a bronze statue somewhere as well. He deserves it, being the icon of the league that he is. Josh Gerben, thanks so much, man. We appreciate all the insight into the world of trademark law, because in the league building process, this is an important part of it, and we wanted to give fans kind of an explanation of why the team names are taking so long and what's the process behind picking those names, and I think you really helped us out a lot, man. So happy 4th of July to you, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Thank you so much. Happy 4th to you as well.
I'm Commissioner Oliver Luck, and you're listening to This is the XFL
Show. And what a show that was by lawyer Josh Gerben. Bryant, now I understand a little bit more about the trademark process, and I pretty much understand that the XFL is killing it when it comes to keeping this tight-lipped. I can't. If anybody would have been able to find this stuff, a leak or some sort of information, it'd be a trademark lawyer like Josh Gerben, and he doesn't really have that much information other than the 5 Seattle team names.
Yeah, it's almost like they threw out the bait to see what they could hook and see how creative or not creative they had to be with these these trademark proceedings. This is where my eyes opened up a little bit. The XFL, how do I put this? There are a lot of team names that people thought that were maybe not available to them that might be, because there was a clause in all this that says that people have to use, even though you have a trademark, you have to show proof of use or something along those lines. Excuse me, I don't remember the exact phrase that he used. So a team name like the St. Louis Stallions, who was trademarked by the NFL 30 years ago, might still be able to use, because based on the length that it takes to get a trademark, maybe never got completed, never got used. They're not using it today, so it might be something that people maybe they'll open up a little bit about. Hey, yeah, Tampa Bay Bandits, 20 years ago, whenever this league was around, 30 years ago. Yeah, though that was a great team name. Too bad we can't use it now. Well, unless they're not using it, maybe it is something in the XFL, or they can just buy it, and they're keeping so tight-lipped about it. I love it. Yeah, and they could just buy it straight up, like you said. And the really interesting thing I think I took from him also was the gamesmanship or the misinformation and to throw people off the scent, tactics that you might do, because these are big announcements. Everybody knows that the team identities are going to be huge for the league, the franchises, and everything moving forward. It's your brand. And the 5 trademark Seattle team names might just be a swerve, for lack of a better phrase, right? It just might be 5 team names trademarked for that exact purpose, to make us all go, oh, one of those is going to be the team name, but just completely throw us off the scent and surprise us with something else, like Sasquatches maybe. That's why, at the end of it, talking to Josh Gerben, the trademark lawyer, I still have hope for Seattle Sasquatches, Bryant. Alan, I hope, and this is me as a friend talking to you, that your disappointment level is very low when you realize that is not going to be the name of the Seattle team.
It's going to be tremendous. I'm going to be very devastated if it's not, but LA Extreme would make up for it. No, I don't. Either way, I'm going to have a ton of fun. I can't wait for like I said, the reaction part to the team names is going to be better than the speculation, which we've had a lot of fun now with, I'd say, for a good part of a year, talking and guessing team names every other show. It feels like. I mean, this is a huge topic for anybody following the XFL or just keeping an eye on the league in the lead up to 2020. And that they're coming soon. They are, but for now, they're doing a hell of a job keeping us off the scent, which I like, because I want to be completely surprised when these get announced, Bryant. I don't know about you.
Well, Alan, these team cities are only 7 months old. I would say about 5 months of that have been, what are the team names going to be? So definitely I think that, but I want to be surprised. I don't want to get leaked. It would be great to see like a good, press conference or something like that, or a huge commercial. I gave you some ideas of when they could announce this a couple days ago. That'd make it kind of cool.
Oh, you texted me the ESPYs.
Yeah, during the ESPYs, why not? If you got the entire nation of sports fanatics watching the ESPYs, it's the only day that professional sports is played. Why not have that day be the day that you actually announce your team names? That would be smart. You're partnering with ESPN. It could be a good thing. Either way, I want it to be announced in a more glamorous way. I don't want some random journalist in St. Louis to leak out what they found out the team name would be.
Yeah, and hopefully not just tweeted out YouTube videos either. Although those will want those, but I do want some sort of event. That would be cool. Ideally, we'll see what the league comes up with, what they do with it. But seems to be a really big deal to all the fans keeping an eye on it. So maybe you give them something there in terms of a spectacle, or like you said, glamorous. We'll see. the team names issue, man. We've covered it completely here in this week's cover 2, and now we just get to wait some more. Oh, man. And before we get to this week's hot read, Bryant, I do want to let everyone know that we do have a pro wrestling podcast, Long Island Iced Tea, A Man Called Wired, as we are known on that show. And this week, I think we have plenty to discuss when it comes to 2 huge names that will be joining the WWE backstage.
Brainiacs, it is I, A Man Called Wired. Yes, it's almost like it's 1999 all over again. Eric Bischoff, the leader of SmackDown. Paul Heyman, the leader of Monday Night Raw. It's happening. And who knows, tons of things happened this week that we haven't seen since the late 90s. It was a fireworks galore. Alan, it seems like we haven't seen those in forever, Long Island. So I'm hyped up for pro wrestling again. How about you?
I've never not been, and I am even more so because the summer is getting hot, and each day it's getting hotter. Not only do we have all that, explosions in WWE, but we've got the Fight for the Fallen coming in All Elite Wrestling, and the G1 Climax starting in Dallas, Texas. I know our New Japan wrestling fans cannot wait for that, so we're going to cover it all as we always do on BBR. That's Brainbuster Radio. Follow us at The Brainbusters on Twitter, Instagram Junior, and Facebook, and subscribe to the podcast on any podcast gimmick. It's Brainbuster Radio. We'll see you this weekend, Brainiacs. And now if you're ready, Bryant, now that we've covered all the team names, I think for the rest of the show, after each play, we stop the clock. If you are good with that rule. I'm changing the rules up a little bit, trying to reimagine the podcast a little here at the end.
A good, crisp podcast is
good,
all
crisp football.
As long as that can be achieved, let's do this the right way.
We are going to talk about some innovations the XFL is going to be making for the final 2 minutes of each half. It's an amazing bit of information that came out this week that we must discuss in this week's Hot Read.
Blue 58! Blue 58! Go! Hey, Ric Flair! Ric Flair! Pepper, Clip, Caliber. Motown, Happy, Jolly, Drunk, Buster, Boomer, Tiger! I think he's got a hound too, Rodney, I think. B-19! B-19 is fucking! Hey, Seattle! Ryan! Orange 83! Omaha!
What if I were to tell you the XFL is going to stop the play clock after every play, no matter what, in the final 2 minutes of the second quarter and the fourth quarter? Would you think that's crazy? Because, well, whether you do or not, it sounds like the league's going to be doing it. The league will be stopping the clock after every play in the final 2 minutes of each half. Repeat. No running clock in the final 2 minutes of the second and fourth quarter in the XFL. Oliver Luck Bryant is calling it the comeback period. Oh my goodness. I'd say a mini bombshell dropped by the league this week.
Is the play over? Can I continue now? Okay, cool. The next play is going on. Alan, this is huge. I think this is the biggest thing I've seen in football in a very long time, and I honestly mean that, because games aren't over anymore when you get to those 2 minutes and you have to stop them on first down anymore. I mean, you're talking about a 5-second play now. No longer takes 40 seconds. It takes 5 seconds. So what does that equal out to in a total of 2 minutes? I mean, that's 5 times, do the math, 5 times, I don't know, what, like 60 plays? Or something like that. I don't know how many plays this is, but this is a huge amount of plays in that short amount of time that actually makes this game even more exciting. The only thing that I worry about, Alan, is that honestly, it's 24, by the way. The only thing that makes this, worried about a little bit is that doesn't make the rest of the game not that important.
This isn't going to change the rest of the game. This is going to make the ends of games exciting. The only issue I might have with it is it takes, I think, a lot of what goes into being a head coach live in a game out of the equation. The hoarding and manipulation and planning of what you do with timeouts is a big part of being a head coach. You really don't have to worry about that in the XFL now if you're one of the 8 head coaches. You don't need any timeouts at the end of the game, because whether it's an incomplete pass, a run, a completed pass, whatever. The clock's stopping. You don't need those timeouts anymore. That is a huge change to the ends of football games, and I'm trying to fathom what this will look like when we get there, because you want every team to have a chance. This means no kneel downs now, but could this also, Bryant, not only taking away the strategy of being a head coach, could it also drag on the ends of halves and games a little bit, going with the comeback period?
Now, do you think you should institute some sort of like mercy rule type of thing, where if the team is now within, 2 touchdowns or 2 scores, that we are going to have a running clock or something like that?
No, I don't like caveats. I think if you're going to go with the comeback period,
well, if you think about it, Alan, if you do 3 plays at 5 seconds apiece, let's say 20 seconds, you run off the clock as an offensive team that's winning the game at that moment in time, and then the other team scores in 30 seconds because that's 6 plays, then you have to do it all over again. That's the 2 minutes could last forever, which is a little worrisome as well, but still it's keeping the games competitive. It's going to keep people interested in what's about to happen. No score in the XFL is safe. I think that makes the games even more interesting as well. I love this comeback period. I also like how they're naming everything. Certain things, like the walk-off touchdown, the comeback period, the shootout. I love how they're just giving these names to these innovations that they're providing to the game. It's actually really cool.
I definitely want cool graphics. I definitely want cool graphics on the screen when it's comeback period time. Maybe even a big voice guy. This is the comeback period.
Well, the NHL instituted something new this year, which is the final 5 minutes brought to you by whoever. I would love just a big boom comeback period thing to slap across the screen, brought to you by Snickers, and then the comeback period begins at the last 2 minutes. That'd be pretty cool. Oliver Luck said, we're trying to get rid of the dead plays, right?
It's the quality of the play.
I think that's something that in my interview with Coach Moss a couple weeks ago, back when I was in LA, he said they're trying to get rid of the dead plays. He didn't really go into more details. I'm sure he knew about this happening, but they want to get rid of the dead plays. The dead plays in football are what's slowing the game down. And so it's kind of nice to see that these types of things are what the XFL is actually thinking about. And you know what? It's something different, and you have to be different. You can't just be a different version of the same version of the NFL with not so good players. You have to be different for people to actually enjoy your games, and this is something that I think is monumental and huge for the XFL.
Now, I saw this news in the Tampa Bay Times article by Thomas Basinger. Sorry if I butchered your name, Thomas. You killed it though with this info, and he talked to Oliver Luck during the Tampa showcase, and Oliver Luck said, quote, what you just said, Bryant. We didn't want a team to be able to have 3 downs where they just kneel and burn off a minute 40. A kneel down as a quarterback, I loved it, he said, but it's also a nothing play. Those dead plays they want to get rid of. And it totally makes sense. I am worried about the strategy of a coach needing to utilize timeouts properly going away in the XFL, but I think I'm fine with it. Overall, I like this idea because the best thing is, like you said, no lead is safe. You got to play to the bitter end in the XFL. How cool is that? So overall, I do like the concept of the comeback period. And anytime you brand something like that, you said it, brought to you by Snickers, there's all sorts of stuff you could do that in terms of monetizing it for the league, which you got to think of as a business, but it's an exciting time. And imagine, it's also a comeback period. It's not making it easier to come back in a game completely. You still got to go out there and execute as a team. Hell, the comeback period could turn into the mud hole stomping period, because now the team with the lead is still going to be trying to score. So you still got to go out there and score, but it is giving you opportunity as the team that might be behind. And imagine, though, a team does come from behind. A crazy 30-point comeback or something in the final 2 minutes. And that goes into the innovative shootout overtime. I mean, you've got some of the most exciting television I could think of when you talk about a football game that ends that way.
Alan, this is going to drive people in Vegas nuts, because I don't know how they're going to be able to do over-unders and spreads and all these things. And it just makes it very interesting for so many different aspects of football in general, this comeback period. It opens up the field for the defense, for the trailing team, right? They don't have to just hug the sidelines or or anything like that, or rush up to a line to get a playoff, anything like that. It's going to be a very different style of football in the last 2 minutes of a game, and I'm quite excited to actually see it happen.
Oh, and we could talk this too, but I'd love to hear what Vince thinks of this too. Does this make the prevent defense defunct? Like, are you ever going to run a prevent defense in a comeback period? Like you said, they don't have to hug the sidelines. The playbook is basically the same as the beginning of the game. It kind of negates it, right? The step keeping a bunch of defensive backs way there in the backfield, because you don't want to give up any kind of first downs in the comeback period. You want the ball.
The running plays are still in fair game. If you're going to run for 6 yards and the clock stops, why wouldn't you still run the football?
Ooh.
Those are key things that are still going to happen in the comeback period that you can't just assume that's not going to happen. You know, nowadays you can assume that the team's not going to run the football. I don't think that's safe anymore with this comeback period, because you got to keep everybody on their toes. Do you sacrifice 5 seconds to make sure the corners stay up so that you can beat them one-on-one on the next play? That's the way you got to think about it. And I think that's the way the XFL approached this. Just ways to give their teams more of an opportunity to keep people engaged in the games, teams and fans. And this is what that does.
And infinite possibilities on the field for the coaches, the players. But now also think about the fantasy ramifications of a comeback period, Bryant. I think running back's the way to go in the XFL fantasy if you're playing that, because they're going to be able to rack up yards at the ends of games even if their team's winning, like you said. It changes everything, this concept of no running clock in the final 2 minutes.
And you could have, a good 24 to 40 plays in the last 2 minutes of an entire game, and that's just extra plays for your fantasy team. Like I said, this changes the way you look at football in so many different ways that I think the XFL, with such a slight change, really changed the way football is going to be played come 2020.
And we've heard Oliver Luck talk about this. So this is from the Tampa Bay Times article. Let's hope this makes it into the official rule book. I think if you like this concept like we do. I thought about that for a good while, Brian, right up until the start of the show, the idea that really coaches and strategizing their timeouts and making sure they use those properly, that goes away. I'm fine with it. Really a part of football that angers you sometimes as a fan, gets you mad at a coach, makes things easier on the coaches as well. I'm fine with that going away for this concept. Very cool. So let's hope that makes it in the rule book. Also, let's hope that the league is ready, because they've got some big dates coming up, man. I mean, in addition to the Tampa Bay Times article, an awesome article on The Athletic, or in The Athletic, what came out that we all read from Greg Allman, who was in Tampa for the showcase, got some good stuff out of Oliver Luck. The second week of October, when the draft is held, is going to be a snake-style draft. It was revealed in this article, much like any fantasy draft usually, to avoid a competitive advantage for certain teams at the top at the beginning. That's some good info. I mean, that makes sense, right? In all's fair in the draft that way, correct? You didn't want this to be same order every round, did you?
No, I did not want the same order everyone. Snake draft is the way to go, but I want to know. We'll have to have a full draft episode too, but I want draft picks to be tradable. Beforehand, when you select the first player in the draft and somebody else wants them and they want to give you their first and their second, let them do it. That's what I want. But we'll move on.
I'm all for that.
I could talk 10 hours about that.
Yeah, me too. You're getting me to think how you want your teams to be customizable, and so you should open up trades. You're right. I like that. Also in this Athletic article, the waves of player signings basically was highlighted. And obviously we have the wave of player signings coming up with wave one after the showcases end, and a lot of these guys will be thrown into the pool. We've been told 200 to 300, 350 players from the showcases will be put into the draft pool. And then we have that August 31st date, Brian. NFL cuts 90 to 53, and that opens it up for more players to enter the draft pool. And then we're going to have that final wave that Oliver Luck has alluded to, especially I think he said it a couple weeks ago. He even brought up the name Keith Reaser, who played for the Apollos in the AAF, talking about players who are practice squad guys in the NFL who bet on themselves to go get tape and playing time instead of sitting on a practice squad. Keith Reaser did that with Orlando, and now he's back with the Chiefs, and he basically banked $200,000 extra dollars or something, and is, signed a deal with the Chiefs instead of just being on a practice squad. So he says those type of players are going to be out there, about 100 or so in January when the season's over in the NFL. That third wave right before XFL kickoff is going to be a bunch of players leaving NFL teams and either signing to be on practice squads or taking the chance with the XFL. And I like how Oliver Luck put it in this article. We can get either 100 of those guys or none of them. They don't really know quite yet, but that third wave is going to be really interesting because it's right before kickoff in January, a month out.
That's going to be interesting how those players get assigned to teams and things like that. That's a very fine line. Yeah, when that window opens, right? Because you're going to be in training camp in January. You definitely want those players there for training camp. You don't want them there showing up after. It'll be interesting to see if they can sign these players beforehand for that third wave, or are they going to let them trickle in slowly? Does that affect the competitive balance? Does that affect the quality of the play? If you have players walking in at the very last minute not really knowing what's going on. It'd be an interesting decision for the XFL to take on that. But the snake draft definitely is the way to go. Second wave of players, August 31st, that's when the cuts happen. It's going to be, like I said, the calendar is still about, so what do we technically see? We have August, September, October, November, December, January, February. We're about 7 months away from kickoff.
Yeah, 3 months out from a draft.
Yeah, and that 7 months is tightening up every single second, right? Because you have so many things that need to happen before then. This showcase that's coming up on Saturday is going to be done. It's going to be over with. St. Louis is done. You're going to start signing players, and then you need to get your rule book in, right? That's the next step, I would think, for the XFL, because then you're going to have even more players coming in, and you need to focus on assigning those to teams, and how the draft order is going to work. Is it going to be a random, lottery pick? How's all that going to work? Who knows? Either way,
arm wrestling contest.
Oliver Luck and team scrambles. Either way, Oliver Luck is going to have a very busy summer and fall. The rest of his staff as well. Man, I can't even put my head is going to explode with all the things that need to happen, and people are worried about team names.
Yep, I mean that's going to be fun too. But as someone who loves the draft, the NFL draft, I mean this is like think of this road to 2020 is really the ultimate off-season if the NFL ever had something like this, because it's essentially what happened to the NFL over the course of a couple months. We're getting for the next 7 months plus when it comes to, especially if you're a draft junkie. Not the pomp and circumstance of the NFL draft, obviously, but the process, the evaluating, the talent hype, the team building, the planning going on, in getting ready for a season is so exciting for not just the people involved with the teams, but fans, because that means when you're planning for a season, that means everybody's 0-0. There's hope. There's hope for each fan base, and of course hope for the league as a whole. It's very exciting, and it's going to be plentiful for the next 7 months, the amount of hope. And I just cannot wait. I cannot wait for that draft now in the second week of October, and when teams have players, because, Brian, in just a few weeks, I think, we're going to have players in the league signed. I mean, I assume so. Once these showcases are done, that process gets going. So like you said, I guess any kind of lull that Oliver Luck and Team XFL had, on this building of the league, this road to 2020, all lulls are gone. It's 1,000 miles an hour until February, as far as I'm concerned, from here on out.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, you got to remember is when you have players like Keith Reaser who are going to be willing to bet on themselves, like you did with the AAF, this is going to make the league and the quality of the play better. It's so many different things to think about. Alan, for geeks like us, the draft can't come soon enough. I'm so excited to do something for that, for the show, just to watch as a fan, everything that you can think of. I know Vince is there. Jake might be still waiting for that rule book probably more than anything, but either way, we are all hyped. Hype-feed. That's still a thing?
No one says that
LIT
anymore.
As well.
Yeah.
No one says that anymore.
No, you say lit. You say lit. That's cool.
I can say lit? Okay. This summer's going to be
say whatever you want, man, as long as you are enthusiastic for 2020. And I know you are. I know Jake and Vince are. I know all of our awesome listeners are, because they subscribe to the show. They're telling their friends. They're getting them on board. If you're out there and you're explaining the XFL to someone and they say, yeah, but what are the team names? Don't dismiss them. Bring them in. Tell them what you've heard on our show now, and say just be patient, because those are coming out, and when they do, it's going to be really fun to talk about, and not to mention everything else going on. If you're a football junkie, obviously the draft process is fascinating, and if you need all of this constantly and as much of it as possible, that's where Patreon comes into play, where we cover it. I feel like this week, Bryant, we literally did, if we weren't posting something every day, we're at least working on something to post to the Patreon and to the main feed all week long. It's becoming nonstop, and it's getting bigger and better because we're getting closer to kickoff February. So go check it out, patreon.com/thisisthexfl show. Follow us at XFL show on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And you got anything left, Bryant? Because I'm ready to go eat leftover hamburgers and hot dogs and try to explain to the people I'm hanging out with over the weekend that team names are great, but what about this draft process?
The comeback period. Alan, I will just throw out our YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/thisisthexfl show. Become a subscriber. You'll get a lot of awesome content. We also pull the interviews from these shows and actually post them there individually. So if you wanted to re-listen to what Oliver Luck had to say to Alan while he was on the field in New York, you can see that without actually having to listen to the whole show all over again. So check that out. Become a subscriber. Don't forget about that. And Alan, what is a work holiday? I don't even know what those are anymore, man. I'm sure Oliver Luck doesn't.
No, there's no such thing, especially if you're on this road to 2020. There is no stopping. So let's get at it some more. Now we got to pick Vince and Jake's brain about the comeback period, because I don't even know if they've heard about this. You and I haven't talked to them over the holidays, so that's going to be fun. And, we're going to have a lot of fun coming up next week as well, getting ready for the St. Louis Summer Showcase. So get ready, because players will be signed pretty darn soon, and we'll have a lot to talk about. As always, for Bryant, I'm Alan. Thank you for listening. This is the XFL show. Remember, please do remember, they're listening.
Thanks for watching and listening, XFL fans. Don't forget to tell us what you think in the comments below, or even better, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all things XFL. Check out some of our other videos and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at XFL Show. This is the XFL Show is a production of Pretty Easy Podcasts.